everybody, and welcome to a special interview with the artist. Really excited about this one. Today I'm joined by not one, but two people. So, first off, Andy Wardle. He's been on the interview before. Andy, welcome back. Glad to have you here, sir.
Thanks for having me again. What a treat.
Absolutely. Though we're under slightly different circumstances today. Also joining us, your partner in, well, not crime is the wrong word, but partner in an amazing
Yeah.
project. There you go. Henry, how you doing? Henry Steele.
Hello. Very well, thanks, bud. Thanks for having me on.
And obviously, both of these gentlemen represent the Cult of Paint, which, if you don't know their YouTube channel, then I'm sorry for you. You need to go over and subscribe. It will be in the description. Please go immediately do that and watch all of the wonderful content that they're putting up. But obviously, they also teach. They also have a wonderful Patreon full of a lot of deeper dive tutorials. But most importantly, today, what we're here to talk about is you gentlemen are running a little Kickstarter, and it's got about a week left. Now, it's successful. And so now the question is just, what can we unlock? What additional goodies can we, as the audience, actually unlock? That's what we're doing here. That's right.
We got told it was by a friend of ours that's helping us with the sort of back end of the campaign. He was like, look, if it does well, you need to start expecting people to be quite demanding with unlock things. And we're like, but we've only got so much stuff. We can't like magic another model out of the end. Like, well, if it gets there, you're gonna have to do something. So we're getting creative now. We've got branded skateboards coming up.
There you go. That'll be exciting.
Should be cool.
So we're going to talk about the Kickstarter today. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about both of you gentlemen. So where I want to start here is, before we jump into the Kickstarter and all that, Andy, we had a great interview. I feel like I know where you came from artistically. And by the way, I would encourage everybody to go watch the interview with Andy. It was fantastic. Obviously, Andy is an amazing painter. Both of these gentlemen are amazing artists. By the by, if you're watching live, you'll notice that right down here underneath me is a scrolling little selection of images, and this is all of the models painted that you can get in this incredible Kickstarter. So check them out. Done by a wide swath of artists, a couple of which were done by Andy. I think yours is actually up on the screen as I was saying that beautiful like samurai elf with like the long sword, that insane no dashi or whatever type sword over his back. Yeah, gorgeous.
Perfect.
But Henry, I want to ask you. So, how did you get into painting? Like, what was your start? What got you into this hobby?
So I think I did the first time round thing. Like I think a lot of us in that sort of 30 to 40s bracket was into it as a kid. I think a mate's older brother or something like that. A few years of that, then the sabbatical, and then. I came back in. I was working in Germany, and at the time, like you didn't have Wi-Fi and you didn't have all that type of thing. So it was bookshops and DVDs. So I found the Eisenhorn trilogy in this German bookshop, and they usually have like a small section of English language books. And I was like, I used to love Warhammer. Still a nerd, let's grab this. This should tide me over for a good few weeks. And sort of at the very back of that, it said, coming soon from the same author is Horus Rising. Came back in with a heresy, and that was kind of it. I lived. It was the same time we were just starting to get hobby podcasts as well.
Gotcha.
So for the first couple of years, my return to the hobby, I didn't buy a model or anything like that. I just enjoyed listening to the podcasts, played Dawn of War, and that type of thing. And then I moved with work, and I think it was just that time in life where I just didn't want to go out onto the pub every night. So I started. I thought, you know what? Let's do something creative. I've always worked creatively and stuff like that. Why don't you do some painting and stuff? And as it was, I lived about 2 minutes walk from what is now Element Games, the game store it was before that. And that was kind of it. And then, just the creativity side of it. I met Andy on a painting class, and sort of we went from there. We both loved teaching, taught teaching, decided we wanted to try and take it full time or professional, and here we are, however many years later, with all sorts in between. You know, commission painting, competition painting, all that
Sure. Yeah.
But at the end of it, I'm a Warhammer nerd. I'm Lord of the Rings. I love that too, but that's about it.
Gotcha. So you have a very tight, limited nerd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dune, actually, I love that book, but outside of that, that's it. And then it's just the Warhammers, really. A little bit of BattleTech. But yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to. Oh, geez. All right. Well, I'm going to resist the urge to dive down this rabbit hole of Dune and BattleTech as you've hit. I'm more of a broad nerd in my things, and you hit a couple of big ones for me there. But we'll pass by. We'll pass by that. Okay?
We can chat about those another time.
All right. So, how did you two decide? Like you said, you met up at a class. How did you two decide to start Cult of Pain? What was like your initial concept when you wanted to do it? And I'll throw this back and forth. Both of you can kind of share your version of the story or whatever.
So I don't know. We'd done some teaching already as a sort of side gig, I guess. And at the time, I hated my job, so I quit. And was like, oh, I need to do something. And I really loved the teaching aspect of it. I thought, at that time in my life, I didn't really have any other responsibilities. So if we were going to give it a go, we should give it a go. And we kind of figured it needed, if we were going to make this thing work, it needed one of us to sort of be full-time on it. And yeah, we just had a chat. We both wanted to do similar things, didn't we, mate? We wanted to create miniatures. We wanted to teach classes. That was sort of it. And we were like, well, that's enough to run with. And then just decided if we were going to do it, we wanted to do it as professionally as possible. Make it look as slick as possible, provide as professional a service as possible, which we didn't really feel there was that in the hobby at the time.
Gotcha.
For that type of thing. And just ran with it, and it's just kind of snowballed. I mean, it's a lot of work. But it's pleasingly snowballing as it were. It's building, and I'm sure we'll talk about them at some point. But the airbrushes were a really nice way to get our name out there quite early on.
Yeah, that's one of the pivotal moments. I think the airbrush, and I think this Kickstarter is probably one of them too, because when we had discussions, let's do this brand, Cult of Pain. Like you said, I think we really wanted to make it as professional as possible, and little things like having the branding as contemporary as possible too. And I think hopefully that comes across in the Kickstarter, because that's where you've been able to see the most amount of branding, because there's so much stuff to see.
It's been a nice evolution, hasn't it, of the brand in that?
Yeah, and we both had that vision and desire to do a brand that does multiple things. And we started with classes, and when we were doing classes, I don't think people had an idea what we intended to do. And obviously we did the sci-fi range, which we're super happy with. But what's really great about the time right now is what we wanted to do, a fantasy and a sci-fi range that's been realized as of this month. So we're getting closer to, I guess, that original vision we both had. And it's been quite an amazing year, actually, hasn't it, for us as a brand? Because we've done so many things that we said in those early conversations. They're actually coming into fruition now, aren't they?
Yeah, and we kind of had to, given everything that's gone on this year with everything. It was that sort of sink or swim moment for the business, really. And it was just go 100 miles an hour at it, and let's try and come out of it all stronger.
I want to dive into that for a minute. I think that's a really good point. So obviously, I know I haven't been teaching much this year. Hasn't really been the year for it. And I know that was something you guys both love, and I do want to dive back into teaching a little bit later. But obviously, when that shut off, did you find this year has really been like an opportunity? Was it this global pandemic situation that made you say, okay, we're definitely doing this whole big range as a Kickstarter? did that help push you in the direction, or were you already, those plans were
No,
already
no.
in motion? It was just happy timing?
The Kickstarter should have happened quite a long time ago. Like
Okay.
this, we started this particular project 3 years ago.
Yep.
And there's been various delays, including a pandemic. So
Gotcha.
yeah, nothing that we've done this year would not have happened, but it's
changed
perhaps allowed us to. I think it's galvanized us in a way. Like the business has been going well for a couple of years. It's been steadily growing and becoming more established. And it's hard, in our industry. I think reputation is everything.
Yeah.
We didn't want to go out the blocks doing lots of things not particularly well. We wanted to focus. We knew we were good at teaching. We'd done teaching. We thought, right, let's solidify that. Let's become one of the top in-person tuition classes in the world. Okay, that's an achievable goal. Let's work towards that. Okay, now the miniatures range. And then we always had this idea of YouTube and Patreon and private sort of digital tuition. But this year's just really, there was no better time. Obviously, there's a much better times than now, but there was no better time to see if those things were going to work, if there was an appetite for them from people. Because there's a lot of great online resources, right?
Sure.
And it was were we actually going to add anything to that? Was there any reason for us to do it other than vanity? But we sort of looked at it all and we sort of went, okay, well, we can complement the live classes with this element of the YouTube. And all those comments we're always getting about what paints did you use. Right. Well, okay, we'll do the YouTube for that. Then there you go. You can see what paints we've used. Patreon was there for us to not necessarily go. Patreon's a really nice way for us to interact with the sort of hardcore cult fans.
Sure.
And that's been fun for us. That's, I would say, is the thing we're still learning how to get the most out of. The tutorials and things on there are lovely. But I think there's a lot more you can do with Patreon that we're looking forward to exploring. Things like live streams and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, you guys have been doing some live streams during the Kickstarter with painting going on, and those have been fantastic. I'm trying to tune into them every time where work allows. It's just fun. You guys have a great rapport with each other when you're both on there, which I think is good. It seems like you guys have a fantastic working relationship. Is that kind of where the partnership came out of? You guys just got along and were like, yeah, I think we could work together and not strangle each other?
Yeah.
Mindset's similar, isn't it? But then also, I like our kind of contrasting opinions quite a lot. And it's very often that we have different opinions, very often. But we always kind of listen to each other's reasoning and then make a decision. And, when we talk about it later, even with the Kickstarter, what was really cool was when we're coming up with characters, we really had totally different ideas. And that's why you get different characters. And I think that's great for me because I'm quite narrow-minded in what I like. So having somebody who likes, for example, dwarves, and I really don't like dwarves, is great for a brand. So
well, I can say that
well-rounded.
2/3 of the people on this show right now don't like dwarves. So I'll let you do the math there as to which side I fall down on.
Henry's left the chat.
Yeah. Nah, he's right. It's from. I mean, I think literally the first chat we had about it, we were wandering around Andy's hometown, probably off to get some pastries of some description, and I think we said on that chat, if we were going to do it, we wanted to be brutally honest with each other from the get-go. We both generally worked for ourselves as well as other people, but often for ourselves for a long time for most of our adult lives, and that is in itself is a challenge. So I think as soon as you were working with someone else, that was going to be challenging. And we just said from the start, if there was ever an issue, just say it, and don't get upset.
Right.
And it's meant that very, very rarely do we have anything approaching like arguments, which is from a business point of view is brilliant. And also, as Andy's just said, for nearly every single decision, one of us is acting as the naysmith. one of us is always arguing that opposite point, even if sometimes we both agree on it. There's always that challenge. Okay, let's do this. Why? And I think it means we end up with a better product or whatever it is at the end of it. But it's been a good working relationship generally.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I want to come back eventually to talk about some of the other stuff that's going on. I want to talk about YouTube and how you see that and what the content you see yourself putting out there. I'm a big fan. By the way, both of you have wonderful teaching voices. I just want to say that. You both sound so calm and yet confident in the way you deliver your instructions that it just feels like, oh yeah, that's no problem. Just here's what we're gonna do. It's no problem. So it sounds silly, but it's an important thing. It's a thing I lack. So I notice it right away. At any rate, what I want to talk about though first is let's get into this Kickstarter. Let's start deep diving. Where obviously as you mentioned, you've done a couple sci-fi figures. They're gorgeous. There's both busts and full figures that you had done previously. So I suspect you knew you wanted to pivot and do something fantasy. How did you come to this particular project? Like, what was the inception of this, right? How did we get to all of these cool elves?
I'll let Andy take this, and then if he doesn't tell you the truth, I'll tell you the truth.
All right, that sounds good.
So, in a nutshell, I like elves the best. So, my top 3 Warhammer factions are Wood Elves, High Elves, Dark Elves, and I can't remember what the others are. So I said, Henry, can we do a whole range of elves? And he said, yeah, all right. Have you got any different notes, Henry?
That's pretty close, isn't it? We if anything, the fantasy range was a lot easier for us to decide upon than the sci-fi range. With the sci-fi range, we took quite a different aesthetic to just about anything else out there, quite deliberately as well. And I think it was quite challenging for a lot of people. There wasn't your generic space dude and generic GW knockoff this, that, and the other type thing. I think with fantasy, you've automatically got archetypes, right?
Sure.
So, and we think generally as well when it comes to these larger scale painting, I think it definitely favors fantasy things over sci-fi things. So straight away, we knew we'd be probably gain a wider audience that would be interested in it. The only caveats really was when Annie was like, I want to do elves. I was like, okay, but we're not just going to make a high elf, a wood elf, and a dark elf, but bigger.
Oh.
And then that was it, and we're like, great. And then we ended up with probably near enough 20 elf characters, of which we're seeing 5 of them in this Kickstarter. 6 of them in this Kickstarter.
With the puppy.
With Wolf, yeah.
Yeah, the Wolf counts.
Who's developed into a character of his own, which is really cool.
Look, the doggo absolutely counts. That's 100% in, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I am quite sure that elf would count their dog as somebody they care about. So there you go.
Hey, you've got to look closer at Wolf. That's not your regular wolf right there.
There you go.
Always in wolf form. We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe it's a lady hawk situation or whatever is what I'm hearing here, but it's like a lady wolf or something like that. All right. So did both of you work together and sketch out the concepts? Did you work with a concept artist? Because you said you had about 20 of them, which makes sense. Sure, you had more than you probably were going to produce in a first run.
So, it's essentially we chat and go, right, let's have a wood elf, a baddie elf, this, that, and the other. Let's have one with this weapon. Let's have one in this pose. And I go, okay, great. And then I go away and try and find a little bit more character to them and background to them and a setting to them. and then go back to Andy and be like, okay, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this? Okay, yeah, that's cool. That can be the spear one. Okay, what are we going to do with that? Take it further, until we had these characters, with names and with actual settings and with inspiration things like a mood board, if you will, even just in text. And then we went to a concept artist that we work with on our sci-fi range, Max Fitzgerald, which I think a lot of Warhammer people will be familiar with. He's had artwork in the recent AOS RPG. I can't think what that's called. It's Soulbound.
Soulbound, yeah. Yep.
He's had some lovely artwork in there. When we went through that transition period of the old world into Age of Sigmar, there was, I can't think who it was, someone created a Tomb Kings book.
Tyler Mingle.
Yeah, Tyler, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought so. And I believe Max did a lot of artwork around that.
Oh, nice.
And since he's an up and coming guy, and a few people will probably have heard of this Turnip 28 movement, which, if you're into the sort of grimdark Blanchitsu type thing, it's his own little strange creation, which is really fun. We're going to have a live stream with Max on Monday.
Oh, nice.
Where we chat to him lots. I was going to do it as a pre-record, but I think having it as a live stream might be more fun. So you'll all get to see the wonderful character that he is, and he was a known quantity to us. We knew that working with him, he was good at translating our ideas, and as it turned out, he was, because he then takes that and takes it up to like 11, and then we dial it back down to 10, and we go.
Gotcha. All right. I want to hone in, though, on these aesthetics, okay?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I love about this project that you put together is the aesthetics of these elves they're really not just like, oh, yes, okay, it's a high elf or it's a wood elf, right? Like, when I look at the visual language you're using with these figs, be it the full scale or the bust, it doesn't really matter, because obviously they're the same people, just kind of modified to fit the scale. The design of them is really interesting. So, like, the one that I've got here, which is this girl, this bust, I'm really excited about. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce her name. We're going to talk about these sort of Welsh-influenced names later at some point, by the way, and how you've cursed me with the inability to say the name of any of the names of any of the figs in your range.
Yeah,
so that's all right. But she's got these like heavy leathers and like all leathers, right? It's just like she's very much built in that sort of aesthetic where she feels kind of wild, and all the patterns are very rough, hard things, right? These hard leathers and stuff like that. Whereas the archer is all this like soft flowing cloth and movement, right? And stuff like that. Everything feels very sweeping and gentle. And then you look at what are some of like the more evil looking ones, like I said, the samurai elf earlier, but like clearly doesn't have it feels almost like a non-Western aesthetic with this huge, like I called it a no-dashi. It's the closest sword that I can picture to it in my mind, right? And like a lot of like small chunky volumes of all these little armor pieces that are there separating it out. Like where did you get into the detail of all that? Like what set all that in your mind? I'd love to hear about, how you guys kind of came to those aesthetics.
That comes, I mean, a lot of that work is done in the prelims, so before we even go to the artists, and partly that comes from wanting. There's a ton of background and lore to these characters that obviously we haven't spoken about, but I think if you get it right, then the design should reflect that the model has some of that, if that makes sense. And one of the really nice things Andy mentioned earlier, we often come at projects from different angles, is he was able to, I could go to him with this idea for an elf, a character, but he can also come in and say from a display painting standpoint, right, let's use that model to explore how someone could get better at painting skin, Let's on that model, that'd be a perfect one for us. So like Drafen the hunter model, like let's use that to use loads of leathers on. Let's
Right.
have because that will be great to learn to paint leather.
Yep.
And there's obviously, we're planning on running classes when we finally can on quite a lot of these models, because why wouldn't we? It's going to be lovely to run the more classes we can on our own figures. We'll still do lots on Space Marines, though, don't worry. But it's there's an awful lot from Andy in all of those models where he will have gone, no, there needs to be more skin here, less skin there, that hair won't work, those textures, no, go more for the soft textures, that'll be more fun to paint. So because at the end of the day, they can't just be 3D versions of cool artwork, right? They've got to be cool models. You've got to be able to paint them.
Right.
You can't have a business with paint in the name and not produce things that are fun to paint.
Are we paintable?
Yeah, no, it's such a huge deal. I look at a lot of what people produce and you're like, oh, that's super cool art you made into a figure. But that seems
right.
like it would be really actually painful or unpleasant to paint. Like we've all seen those figs at some point in our life, right?
And you don't want things to be difficult to paint, right? Like challenging is important, but if you make a model that's difficult to paint, then surely you're ruining someone's fun.
Right. There's a difference between challenging and just unpleasant because of the design, right? If I could give one piece of feedback to all the people out in the world who design miniatures, who are doing God's work, and thank you for doing so. I'm deeply appreciative. But it would be, make your figs more like what you guys have done here, because every one of these looks eminently paintable. Like when I look at the figure, a lot of them have a fairly open frame on them. The individual sort of materials or volumes all look well expressed and look like, yes, I can get that. I don't have 1,000 different little bangles somewhere that I'm trying to figure out what the heck this even is. Like, why is this here? What is this doing? Why does this fig need this thing, right? So yeah, these you have a cleanliness to it, is I guess the best way I would say it, into your sculpts that all come through, which I very, very much appreciate.
That's the nice thing to pick up on. Like that clean aesthetic is something we try and carry through with everything, actually, not just the models. So I'm glad. It's nice that you've picked up on that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that what excites me about doing a range as well, and we're saying about making them nice to paint, is being able to provide like support to paint them.
Sure.
So I was just thinking about the wolf, and it's got not much sculpted hair, right, which a lot of people won't be used to. But we've obviously already put that tutorial out, and it's really nice to be able to offer tutorials to go with them, because I think it sucks if you're a model manufacturer that people don't paint your figures because they're intimidated or something.
Right.
It's fine. We all have stuff in the drawer. That's not too bad. But if they're not painting them because they're worried, then that would annoy me. So I think that we can do tutorials for them all to help people have a go. That's also really cool and excites me as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think at this point, do you have all of the tutorials covered for everything between YouTube and Patreon with what you've unlocked, or do we still have more to go?
Not quite. There's a few more.
A few more to go. Well, then I think we know what the audience needs to do. We got to push those stretch goals up. So if you haven't already backed the project, get over there and back it. And I'll know if you back it right now during the show, because you all can't see it, but I have over on my screen, I'm watching the little thing. I saw one person back right now, so I'm good. Whoever you were who's watching, thank you. Well done. Well
Beautiful.
done.
Thank you
very much.
So let's see some more support here. I mean, it's so beautiful. Like, you really cannot go wrong. Yeah, I just want to. This is, and obviously, it's, my interest in this is just getting amazing figs out there for people to paint. But I do want to share one thing of my personal experience with this. So, Andy was nice enough to send me the bust, and I got it out the day I got it. first of all, so this is where I'm going to talk about things that annoy me and how 0 of them are on this bust. Okay.
Oh, phew.
Good.
No, here I'm so serious, and this isn't just me blowing smoke.
Where he was going with that one.
No, look. One of the things I love so much is when figs are well designed to where things like the gaps that might normally be there when you put two pieces together are so masterfully hidden. And this is one of those things. You have this like whipping piece of hair around her neck that just kind of adds some extra volume here and helps circle the face. First of all, great aesthetic there to help kind of ring the face again, but also just don't have to worry. It's just some extra kind of coverage for that combination of the head to the neck joint. The arms have these little bracer type upper bicep pieces on them. Slides right in. Beautiful. I had to do 0 gap filling. Fit like a glove. There was like no mold lines. I mean, I think I maybe scraped one tiny mold line off of this girl. The cast was incredible. Everything is sharp. Like all of the detail is crisp. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all of that credit really has to go to the guys at Big Child Creatives who did the sculpting and the casting for us. We worked with them on the sci-fi range. They did the casting for us, but we wanted to try and do the whole project with the one company for a few reasons, really, just lessons we've learned along the way. But those guys are at the top of their game. And so young as well, comparatively. Those guys are going to be around hopefully for a long time as sculptors, and they're already producing just phenomenal stuff. As you said, it's something we've tried to do throughout the whole process, is basically use the best stuff on the best people that we can get a hold of. Unless you're going to do a Games Workshop knockoff, 32mm miniatures range, so basically for people to use as budget Warhammer.
Sure.
Or you're going to produce one of these sort of crossovers we see now, which are sort of a board game / miniatures game.
Yep.
Unless you're looking to do something like that, you're not getting rich. You're not driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis, being a boutique large-scale miniatures producer.
Oh, darn it! And there, I thought my road to wealth was finally sealed.
Right?
I thought I had it all figured out.
So there was this choice of, well, as soon as you accept that, I think a lot of pressure goes off, because you can just focus in on producing the best quality boutique product that you can, and there's a lot of enjoyment in that. There's a lot of reward in doing that. So for us, that was going to the best people that we were aware of that could do it. The cast that you've got as well, Vince, we were really pleased with. Like, that's not a master, that's a production style cast. And their new resin is lovely. Like, we couldn't be happier with the actual physical object, right? Object itself, which is obviously really nerve-wracking because you see it, in your mind, in artwork, in ZBrush or whatever program they're using to sculpt it in. Lovely renders. Oh my god, what's it going to actually look like when it comes, in the package?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So I again, like, it blew me away putting it together, and I am very excited to paint it. As I mentioned to you guys off air before the show, I'm finishing up like the last fig for an army. And what's keeping me going through the army project is this sitting here on my table waiting. This is like my reward for finishing the army, right? Like, I've got her set aside as a treat, as my dessert, something fun to
It'll
paint.
Be a nice
just getting an army painted.
Palette cleanser, won't it, as well?
Exactly.
From the gardens. Yeah, something completely different.
Very, very different, yes.
She's just on the shelf behind me, Vince. I think she's my next one as well.
Nice. Yeah, I can see her back there. Yeah, it's such this dynamism of that fig. She's got so much movement in her. It's crazy. I love it. I think I've got the scene in my head that I want to strike with her. I think so. We'll see. All right. So, Andy, I want to go over to you for just a moment here, because I want to touch on something I'm curious about. You said you had like 20, original concepts. Okay.
Yep.
Was there a concept in there that didn't make it in that you were like, oh man, I really liked that one?
Um, I think that like yeah, but there were ones that we both brought to the table that were like, it's our range together, but there were definitely ones that were like Henry's ideas and more my ideas, and then we discussed them together. For example, the warrior, the samurai, was all Henry, so I didn't come up with that idea at all, and it was quite cool because I ended up doing the box art for that, and not one of the ones that was more that I pushed more.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah. So for example, the samurai was all Henry's like drive. We're gonna do this theme around some beetles and things like that. And the bust you were talking about with the wolf was one I really wanted to do. I really wanted a female savage warrior running with a wolf, and so yeah, it was really cool that we both had our strong ideas, and there were things we both really wanted to do, like the woodsman, the kind of fawn legs,
Yep.
trees coming out. That was definitely one we are both
Mm.
super on board
Some
with.
people have even compared him to Orion, which I thought was interesting.
He would be great for a Sylvaneth army.
He would be, wouldn't he?
For all you Warhammer fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to the original question with the 20 ideas, I think that we had all these ideas, but together we definitely made a joint decision which are the first ones.
Right.
And the most exciting thing for us about this Kickstarter is that it's been successful enough that we can do more. Because not that we're pessimistic people, but we always put in the worst case scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we basically have all these ideas we wanted to do someday, and more ranges and more sci-fi models, but we knew that this Kickstarter had quite a bit riding on it. So to do those other characters, the rest of that 20, this had to work, which is why we're very, very grateful, because we're really passionate about making miniatures to make cool miniatures.
Right.
I want to do these because I love painting, and I want to paint some cool elves, and nobody was making them. So that's like the genuine kind of drive behind it. But is there one we didn't make in this? Yeah, but I think you'll probably see it in the next one. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Keep it under your hat. That's fine. By the way, just quick.
We'll keep that under wraps for now. Maybe we'll talk about stuff later.
There you go. Fair enough. By the way, 2 more people just backed. I want to say Matt Carroll put in the chat that he just backed full pledge. Awesome,
Thanks,
Matt. Well done.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks, buddy. That's awesome.
So the so let's I want to left turn for just a second. Let's talk about YouTube, because you did put up the wolf tutorial on YouTube. I watched it. It was fantastic. Loved it. Okay. It's
Thank you.
It was a great explanation of I think people are oftentimes afraid, you mentioned like having flat surfaces or non-sculpted fur, when they get this concept of like, oh, there's this space and it doesn't have fur that I can just dry brush, because that's kind of how probably we all started with our wolves or dogs or bears or whatever animal model was in our army when we started, right? And I thought you broke the process down really, really nicely of just, look, it's just making little lines over and over and over again. It's it. It's all it is. Just drawing lines, and then you're shrinking them, and you're just, by shrinking it down, you're setting where the light is. It was such a nice, straightforward tutorial. I liked it. I would recommend everybody go check it out, because, by the way, that you're showing it on that wolf, but I would point out that like there's lots of models out there in the world where that works. Oftentimes you can do that same trick with horses. Even in 28 scale, it can still work. You might have to be a little bit thinner, but you can do it. I think of things like that Mind Stealer Spheranx or whatever it's called from GW, the llama cat. He has a lot of that same mix.
Size,
yeah, he's about the same size, and he's the same mix of like some sculpted fur and a lot of smooth area. So there's just a lot of things out there like that. That tutorial would be great for. But I want to talk about your YouTube. It seems to me, I don't know, maybe I'm overreading stuff, but Henry, it seems to me like you might be a slight fan of Space Marines, especially the Horus Heresy era Space Marines. I don't. Maybe I'm crazy. Okay.
Is it us or the people though?
Yeah, I think there's probably a bit more to that than meets the eye, Vince. But there's YouTube's there for people to be introduced to us. Really, very rarely on YouTube are you going to get a 15-minute plus tutorial or anything on there. It's largely about recipes and core techniques for painting, just enjoying painting. I don't want to say casual painting because that's not what I mean by it. But right? It's always hard, isn't it, to actually come up with the wording for that type of thing. Yeah. I suppose it's easier to say that the Patreon is there for the paint nerds. Mm-hmm. The YouTube is there for people that are just enjoying painting and perhaps want a recipe. They either don't have the time, the energy, the inclination, or they haven't, their brain isn't wired that way where they can take a group of colors and go, that's what that will end up looking like. So that's what it's there for. At the end of the day, GW are the recruiter for this miniatures painting hobby.
Sure.
The better they are doing, the better all of us will do.
Because they're just a gateway, bringing more people in who then want to explore more stuff.
Exactly. They're the recruiters, right? And their flagship models are Space Marines. We look back through our various social media things, and you'll see whether that's personal or whether that's for Cult of Paint, and you'll have this obscure niche little large scale model that you've painted, and you've adored every single minute of it, and you pop it up there to share it with the world, and you get 20 likes. And then you take some fuzzy camera phone picture of a work in progress Space Marine base coat, and it gets 500 likes.
Uh-huh.
There's at the end of the day, the Marines are they are the recruiters again to people getting into painting. But I think what we're also keen with it to show is these are just recipes. Yeah, we might use a Marine model to demonstrate them on. That's partly as well because Marines are very friendly to paint.
Yep.
They're just so good feature, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just nice, clearly defined shapes. You've got some flat bits, some curved bits, some spherical bits, some cylindrical bits. There's not too much on them that isn't armor. So you've got nice large areas that you can demonstrate different colors and recipes on. And they just work. But no, we're super conscious of it. We sort of in our mind have got a sort of a marine to non-marine ratio that we try to hit. But yeah, from a personal hobby point of view, I'm a real big fan of the Horus Heresy series. Have been for, as I say, it's kind of how I got back in the hobby. So I've always really enjoyed that. So yeah, there are a lot of Marines.
I've often said the most
popular. And there will always be. It's why we did the wolf tutorial recently. We did that nice tutorial on orc skin. Mm-hmm. We've actually been looking at a few of the upcoming releases and saying, okay, what can we put out that people will find useful for these releases? And wherever possible, if we if we can get away with not using a Marine, we will.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I've often said the most popular thing on Instagram, miniature Instagram, is Space Marine legs. There are more Space Marine legs on this than anything else. But how do you both? Because you both do the tutorials, and so do you split it up? Is there something you're like, Andy? Is there particular things you want to share or stuff you want to get across? Henry, is there stuff you're trying to get across? Is there particular things you really enjoy showing in that format, right? Which is friendlier to maybe the shorter video or a more fundamentals focused lesson, something like that.
I think to be brutally honest with you, a lot of it comes from how we can best use our time. Me and Andy have quite different personal lives and commitments, and it works well where Andy can pick a project for him to work on personally and then document it and use that to help teach on. That's a good use of his time. A good use of my time is perhaps being able to do things purely for teaching.
Gotcha.
I don't necessarily want the United Colors of Benetton Space Marine chapter on my shelf, but I also am really proud of the library that we're building on YouTube for painters to utilize. So that's more where that one comes from. But yeah, Patreon really is where we get to just explore our own projects and go a bit more deep dive on them.
Gotcha.
We discuss everything, don't we?
Yeah.
So, talking about the wolf again, a conversation normally goes, okay, so what we're going to have a YouTube, what we're going to have a Patreon, who's doing what, and it's always a discussion, so it's well balanced. We're both using our time. But we were like, okay, so, obviously the wolf is painting it, promotes the Kickstarter, of course, but it's also a great technique video, which is, is something we haven't covered yet, painting on hair. And then that's going to fit fantastic in our YouTube library. And then, obviously I'm going to do a painted one. So we just work stuff out like that. And then, there was things like I'm doing the lion for Patreon right now. And that's probably going to be 6 or 7 hours of tutorial. And then it was all for the Dark Angels release. And Henry was like, well, I want Dark Angels for myself. So I'll do a Dark Angel recipe video for the YouTube, and I'll do a Dark Angels Dreadnought for the Patreon. And we just, like the models, we just discuss stuff together and try and do something that's got variety. But we're into it too, and then the Patreons and the YouTube people get variety. So it's just always a great discussion like that. And sometimes we get a bit stuck, and it's like Henry said, sometimes like, oh, what can we do that's not marine? So things like having the wolf miniature come out was cool because painted on hair is such a cool thing to teach, and got really great feedback on that, which was so cool as it coincided being on our own figure. But yeah, we're just always discussing and always trying to think of new stuff and trying to do it a little bit different to maybe what's out there. I guess.
Nice.
But there's always got to be that view that YouTube is that's the way a lot of people are going to be exposed to us for the first time.
Right.
So, YouTube will naturally have slightly more business-minded decisions, perhaps, made on it rather than pure passion projects.
Yeah, that's true. It's all part of our thing of, we have the splat and then it goes straight in, and that's pretty strong part of our ethos as well, is we don't want to fluff things out too much, like just get straight in there.
Right.
Exactly. Whereas on Patreon, they're long, waffly videos of us. There's not that much editing necessarily. It's a lot more freeform.
Well, I think that's also what you want to see in that kind of a long format, right? Because people want to see the decisions you're making. Because I think one of the great secrets that I think a lot of people who get newer into the hobby or just start painting, they're early in their hobby journey, and they go watch YouTube tutorials, and a lot of them, you cut together, it's you do this thing, and then we do this thing, and then we do this thing, and you just see like a couple brush strokes or whatever, you see paint go on. And I don't think people realize how much of often as you go on, you end up backing out decisions or choosing to do something different or refining something or just going back and forth, like reinforcing the same color on a leg 8 times because you're not quite happy with how the volume came out. There's all these little touches that I think get obfuscated because of the necessity of shortening of time, right?
Definitely. I think that's a real value of live classes as well. We've always done very small attendance classes wherever possible, except occasionally at conventions. But one of the reasons for that is we like to have people around us during a demonstration so they can see very clearly what we're doing, but also they'll see us muck things up in the demos. And I think that can be incredibly helpful as a painter. I know when I've gone on painting classes with people, it's been great to see these people I look up to make mistakes,
right?
But then to see how do they overcome those mistakes, how do they work around them. That's because you're gonna muck up a lot.
Yep.
It's finding out how you move past that and not letting it derail a project. and moving on. So yeah, you're definitely right with that.
I leave those in Patreon as well.
Yeah.
I did such a bad one this week. I had to paint like a rim of a pad, and it's got like a 90-degree angle, and the paint just went on both angles. This huge blob of paint, and I was just like, "Well, I'll leave that in." I mean, it's like, can you stay within the lines? Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. Like painting like eyes or eye lenses and things. That's always a fun one.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely, yes.
Because if you can nail that in a live class, people think you're like
The second coming, yes, exactly.
Yeah, like, you know.
I think it's harder on video, Henry, because you can't be that close to the mini, right?
So speaking of that, I've been recording an upcoming YouTube video, and hours and hours and hours of footage yesterday it's gone because it's just not good enough, and that is because it's quite a small part of a model that we are still getting used to painting on camera, you know, and I've got good eyesight, but it's perhaps still not quite as good as that. So that's frustrating. Every day's a school day, right? So
Yeah, well, there's also a big difference when you have to hold the fig like this in the camera and then try to get that eye dot or that lens, as opposed to maybe how you would normally do it, which I think for me, I don't know personally, like I pull myself back, sit very like right angle, lock both wrists, and I'm way down here like this. Like I probably just went out of camera, but you know, like I'm way down there like that, just so I can have perfect control. And the only thing that's moving is like the last joint of my finger, and you just can't do that on
on camera. You look like that Golden Demon illustration on the covers of the boxes, don't you? Like painting like this.
Absolutely.
I'm a bit more open now when I'm doing like a tutorial on Patreon and just saying, look, I'm going to edge highlight all of these parts. I can't do that on camera because my head would be in the way. So I'm going to edge highlight these and I'll come back and they'll be done. But, you know, you go along the line. So I think as long as you tell people that, then you can people can get it in a tutorial, right?
Mm-hmm.
All I need is some kind of setup where the camera's directly over my face, but yet I can still see normally. Yes, in my eyes. Yeah, if I can get some kind of Shadowrun, Johnny Mnemonic situation, just kind of some cyber eye cameras, then this, boy, making tutorials is going to get so much easier.
Yeah.
It's going to be a joy.
It's time for them for the like 3D printing to be flawless, and they'll print you Golden Demon models straight out. Roughly the same time.
There you go. Exactly. A couple more people backed. Awesome. Shout out. I saw Emily just backed. Fantastic. Hey, Emily. How you doing? Hope you're doing well over there.
What did they go for?
What's that?
What minis did they go for? I want to know.
Yeah, because that's really, we don't know, right? When you pledge on the Kickstarter, you pledge for, you know, a 54mm model. You'll get to pick it when the campaign finishes in the pledge manager part. So we don't know what's been the most popular figures yet. We've got an inkling from like comments that people have made that it will be like we'll have a few quid or a pint or two on some bets, I think, of what will be,
100%.
what will be the most popular.
Is there? Yeah, I was gonna say. So since as you mentioned, like Henry might have had, you know, the majority stake in this one, or Andy, you might have had the majority stake in that one. How are you betting against each other? Like at some point in the background, like, oh, mine's going to be the one that gets the most takers. I think
with that, it's, and this isn't just a lot. It's like, oh no, everything's lovely, but that individual ownership of the model. For me anyway, it's never really been there. I think when Andy's mentioning it, it's in that very, very early concept part. Basically, what you bring into the party. Mm-hmm. From that point on, all the models have equal amounts of input in them. You know, it can be as simple as me coming and going, I really think we should do a samurai model, and I reckon a beetle would be like a cool spirit animal, anthropomorphic, whatever it ends up being. And that's all I've come with. From that point on to where he is now as a finished model is a collaborative process. So I think we tried to list our favorites and along with the other people that have helped us in this project as well in the background. And I can't think of anyone who's listed, any two people who have listed the same order of favorite models. And we change our minds almost daily anyway.
At different points, they've been my favorites. So, like, the Executioner is my favorite concept, 100%, easily. Just that silhouette Max did with the snake. And sometimes it's been my favorite model. It's probably like it's either first or second anyway. But there was different stages where a figure was my favorite. So pre-concept with the wolf was what I wanted the most. That's the one I want to be made number one. Then when the drawings were done, I loved the Executioner. And then when we got the sculpting done, I really liked the Woodsman bust. I was like, that is a crazy bust. Right. And when I've painted them all, then I'll really know my favorite. Because
there you go.
When I was painting the snake scales for the Executioner, it wasn't my favorite for a couple of weeks.
Had a few cross WhatsApp messages during that time.
Oh, snake scales.
Painted this bit for the 7th time, it still isn't right.
Yeah.
They're there.
But I guess it changes all the time. But I do genuinely love them all, and it's really cool that, because bear in mind, we saw these models finished a year ago.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I still haven't got bored of them, and I'm still like, I want to paint this bust, but I've got to finish painting that one. And so it's cool that I know I'll get around to painting them all eventually. And it's quite nice that I haven't painted them all before campaign, actually, because then I can share my kind of progress as people have seen them, rather than keep them secret like the first two I did.
Right. By the way, Emily said she's planning on the bust of oh gosh. Okay, here we go.
Do it.
Deorgard?
Yes. Okay. That's how I say it.
All right.
Oh my god.
The figure of Sculpting.
Yeah. Spot on.
Nice.
You're good at this, Vin. We'll get you to do like the voiceover bits.
Both here.
Yeah, that's gonna be a winner for you for sure. Yeah. Just actually with my pauses in there. This Sculpting, I guess. That's sure. Let's go with it. Sculpting. Okay. No, so that's.
I said Henry needs to do a video just pronounced in his best Marks and Spencer voice.
Yeah. Should we answer a quick question I've just seen in the comments, Vince? Do you want to do that now?
I want to say two things on that. One, we are going to do some questions at the end of this. So if you've got some questions for Andy and Henry, drop them in the chat.
We love questions.
Yeah, please put them in there. Anything about the campaign or their channel or anything like that. Their painting, their classes, all that stuff. By the way, I'm sure the most common question is, are you going to come teach in my area anytime soon? And the answer is, I'm guessing your answer would be, we want to teach everywhere we can once this is all over, anytime we can, as long as somebody can get a space that's comfortable in a game store that's good to work with, where you've got a good relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. This year's taught me that more than anything. And I was always scared about taking time off work to do these classes, and if anything, this year has been like, when you've got the opportunity to teach a class and visit somewhere new, take every single one. So, we can't wait to be back, can we?
Nah, it's still fundamentally what we're about. Yes, we've got a lot of fingers in different pies now, but teaching is what we love doing, and teaching to a small group of people in the flesh is still by far and away our favorite thing.
Yeah, and shows and conventions where you teach and participate often the highlights.
It's such a good community, man. Like we both game, not as much as I think either of us would like to, but we don't tend to go to tournaments or anything like that. But we have that with painting weekends, with painting competitions. There's that same level of camaraderie, meeting this unique hobby we've got where you can have good friends that you're making as an adult, which I don't think is that common, given a lot when I talk to my friends, but also friends from literally all around the globe.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique. I know my wife's always like amazed at it. Like, who are you chatting to? Oh, so and so. How did you meet them? Oh, well, doing this. Oh, okay.
That's actually really cool.
know.
Yeah, I mean, just having this little chat, really. Met Vince a bunch of times at conventions, like in England and in America, which is cool.
Yep.
So we've both been to each other's countries. And Henry, we wouldn't be doing Cult if it wasn't for classes. So it's brought up some amazing opportunities, and it's definitely the online stuff's obviously amazing, but the in-face stuff is huge, and really, really missing it. So can't wait. Those classes are going to feel pretty special, I think, and appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, don't book on the first one. Obviously, it'll be awful.
No, the enthusiasm will be through the roof.
Yeah.
10 classes later, I'm bored of this now. The first one will be the best, Henry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I should have said.
Sorry, maybe you need to hit I think Henry's thinking like the third. You gotta try to get the third class. That's the peak. There it is. Yeah.
Once we've warmed up. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Nah, don't worry. I've already thought about that, so don't worry.
No, I know. I've been missing it so much. It's the same thing. I didn't realize how much I actually really enjoyed it and valued it, teaching at conventions, going and teaching 2-day weekend classes or something, whatever, until I'm not able to do it for 9 months, basically, or whatever, however long this has been going on now, forever. I don't know. Because you're absolutely right. There's something really great about sort of being locked in the room with everybody and watching everybody learn. You get to go around, you get to see them actually start making progress right in front of your eyes and feel that positivity that they're taking steps on their hobby journey. And it's incredible. Like, it really is such a unique experience. So
it's very exciting. It's very motivating. Being around other painters, regardless of whether you're teaching them. I mean, I've had people on classes that are significantly better painters than me, other Slayer sword winners and things like that, but they've come to learn a technique that perhaps I have more experience in, so I'm teaching them on that. But being in that space with them, and as you say, Vince, like, people just those little light bulb moments, it's very infectious. It's probably a poor choice of word at the moment, but it's very motivating, to see it. I will always come away from classes wanting to paint more. Like, 2-3 day classes where you've got no voice left, everything smells of paint, you've ruined yet another set of clothes. There's just paint everywhere, and all you want to do when you get home from this 5-hour drive or whatever is paint.
That's the cult, isn't it?
It's awesome.
It's the cult.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect description. And your statement there of ruining another set of clothes is also why I always wear an apron.
The apron, yeah.
Coming soon.
It's why all my clothes are paint clothes now.
There you go.
No normal clothes.
No,
it's just all paint clothes. Yeah. Well, I mean, in this time when you're not going out much, it's fine that you're always in your paint clothes. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. Other than the lack of classes, my day-to-day lifestyle hasn't changed massively. So
there you go.
sitting in a cave painting.
Nice.
All right. So we'll let people keep asking some questions. I've seen some additional questions popping up. Keep dropping them in there. But before we get to the questions, what I want to turn to is let's talk the future. Okay? So we know this one's successful. By the way, seen a couple more people back as we've been talking. Fantastic. Keep it up, guys. Great work. What I want to know is what are your ideas? Where are you thinking about going from here? And I'm not asking you to spoil anything or share like this is definitely what we're doing or whatever like that. Just kind of what are the things you'd like to continue to explore, both in your figure ranges or whatever.
Well, there's loads of stuff really, and what's cool is the things we talked about years ago starting to get realized now, and so the things we're talking about now will get realized. We always get do stuff we say we're going to do, but like I said earlier, actually this Kickstarter's amazing for us, and people won't realize how important it is for us because it has solidified Cult of Paint is going to be a miniature manufacturer and do these ranges. And Deorgard is a broad fantasy setting, so you're definitely going to get to see more of Deorgard, and you're going to see me happy with more elves, and you might even see Henry happy with other races.
Yeah.
But
we will go swimming with those little hairy women at some point. Don't worry.
But the sci-fi range is something we're talking about a lot, and I think one of the things that's really important to us is the background, and it's all there. So one of the big discussions with us at the moment is how are we going to deliver the background and the narration to both our ranges, but the sci-fi one especially at the moment, I guess. So now we've got confidence, I guess, that people want to see what we do. We'll push further, and I think, like we were saying about the stretch goals, Henry, we want to do more stuff next time, right? And I think we'll make sure there's more material for people to dig into. So from a miniatures standpoint and the future, there's going to be a lot from us, right? And we are already pushing for the next ones.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the world itself that you're pointing at, between the names and some of the aesthetics, clearly has like a bit of a Celtic slash, like, Welsh type of influence there.
Yeah,
you could
it's
feel
not
it.
even a bit, really, Vince. It's really quite simple. It's just Old English. It's Old Anglo-Saxon. So especially when we were working on the project initially, the whole Viking thing was the Scandi culture and aesthetics was massive.
Yep.
And I guess we've just had the Assassin's Creed game, haven't we, come out? So it still is, it's still very prevalent in society, in sort of nerd society, I guess, or fantasy society. And elves, you could argue, traditionally have had a Far Eastern influence.
Mm-hmm.
I think, so. Yeah, I think that's fair to say as well. But I was very keen for it to have, we're from England. Not in a Brexity way or anything, but I was really keen for it to have this a little bit like how Beowulf or Lord of the Rings was done as this idea of an English mythology. I just thought it would be nice for us to create Deorgard from that Anglo-centric base, So the naming conventions are just Old Anglo-Saxon or Old English words, and what they would very often do would take two words and smash them together and create another word. So Deorgard is just wild land. And it felt succinct. It felt like it explained what we wanted to do enough. It was open-ended enough for us to explore it in a deeper way. And as it's gone on, this idea is developing more and more so of it simply being an alternate mythology for our world as we understand it. Were there these races that came before? What was it like? Where does the warrior is clearly this sort of feudal Japanese influence. You've got the executioner's got that very strong Assyrian influence. We've got other elves that have Central African, Mesoamerican, all these ideas. You've not seen those yet, but they're, it will all get explored in that way. And so, yeah, the actual naming simply comes from me thinking about names for the characters and then looking at Old English words and finding something that fits nicely.
Nice. I think I'm very excited to see where you go. I think one thing, this is just me personally speaking for a moment. I'm a big fan of sort of the whole pan-Celtic lore, because obviously the Celts were, spread across multiple different locations, and as they split up, like English Celts versus Irish Celts versus the Celts that were in France and stuff, all had very different sorts of mythologies and monsters and stories and things like that. And so I'd love to see that kind of thing explored. I don't think I've ever really seen anybody in miniature form explore some of the great like Irish Celtic
Yeah.
lore of some of their interesting, unique monsters and myths and creatures and that
That's
kind of stuff.
yeah, that's super exciting, and that is again. So when you take the Executioner for an example, it was me saying to Andy, look, why don't we? What would an elf look like if it had come from old Iran, or
Right.
that type of thing? And then me going and looking into that culture more and their myths and their history, and then talking to our Max, the concept artist, about it, and he'd go and do more of a deep dive, and he'd come back and be like, oh, well, the weaponry used to look like this, can I do this? And we'd be like, no, that's too freaking weird, try and find something a bit less weird, and he'd come back with it, and that's how they come. So it's just as you say, it's yes, the naming convention is Old English, but that's purely down to the fact that I wanted us not to lose sight of the fact that we are an English brand, British brand. And at the time, as I said, I felt like we were awash with this Scandinavian aesthetic. It would have been very easy to have gone that route with it. Celtic, and it will all mash in inevitably, I'm sure. It's we're not looking to create an old world. We're not looking to create a Middle Earth or anything like that. We want there to be huge amounts of free reign for people to interpret these models how they like, which is why you see one Deorgard bust being purple, the Deorgard 54mm that Dave Colwell did being this incredible kaleidoscopic a fey spirit animal. We want there to be enough information to get people's imagination fired. I know some people, they admit themselves they aren't hugely imaginative. They like to have that lore to draw on and to inspire them. Other people are incredibly creative and imaginative with it. We didn't want to get in those people's way, which is why I said earlier, I think just because you can have a wealth of background to a setting and a character, you don't always, I don't think, need to ram that down people's throats. If it's there, if it makes sense, and if everybody involved in the creative process understands it, you should end up with the model or a miniature that conveys some of that without you having to say anything. It's not just another high elf.
Or stimulate those people's ideas, right? Like if they think they're maybe not that imaginative, but stimulate it and go, oh, I want to do it this color. So you are imaginative. You can, you've got, here's your canvas, and just stimulate that way.
But there is a danger, isn't there, of going too sandbox with things. I think we saw that with Age of Sigmar, didn't we? Like when it first dropped, and now we're really reaping the rewards of that. But initially, I think for a lot of people, it was too free reign. It's too sandbox. It's what on earth is going on here? I need something I can grab onto.
Right.
Tell me.
Yeah. It's about having. I think you're exactly right. It always is a tightrope, and the great designs, the good ranges, what it'll do is it'll give you ideas. It'll springboard your own creativity. Right. It isn't just handing people a blank canvas, but it also isn't handing people like a train that can only go to one place on the rails. Right.
Yeah.
So absolutely. All right, let's do some questions. Cool. By the way, we're like one backer away from getting 10 backers during the show. So I want to see one more person. Come on, you're all out there watching. A lot of people watching. One of you go back. The link is down in the description. You can click it right now. It's right there. So let's get. I want to at least get 10 backers.
If we get 20 backers, then we will have Vince record a small short story that I will write about.
Just full of these words,
lots of terminology, and
absolutely. Oh, it'll be a great comedy addition to the
going in the stretch goal list.
There you go. All right. So Mikey says, you said you need a better than student grade oil to make a wash from.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a recommendation on a brand?
That's a brilliant question, and it's something I think as we're using oils a lot more now, I think it's important to talk about. Not a specific brand, but any of your brands such as Winsor & Newton, Daler Rowney, those are the two I know that you have in like Hobby Lobby and whatnot over in the States, and we have back here in our larger hobby stores. You just need the artist's grade version of it. It will end up being, let's say that the cheap one is £2 a tube, the middle one is £4, and the expensive one is £7, right? It's not massive differences. It's also worth saying, you buy one of those tubes of oil that are, yay big, it's very unlikely you're ever going to run out of it.
I just tell one for everybody because I happen to have my oils on my desk.
Don't be put off by, oh my goodness, it's super expensive, and that's just when we're talking about washes, and that's simply because in those higher grade ones you have a lot more pigment. It's more finely ground, more of this paste basically, so that as you thin it down to create a wash, it maintains some of that integrity. It doesn't separate out, and you get that horrible bitty, grainy effect. If you're just slopping oil on to do grease and streaks and things like that and whatnot with, then the lower grade ones are absolutely fine. But for your washes, you really do need the higher grade stuff. And we had a traditional artist come on one of our classes who paints in oils, and he was sort of saying how a lot of the guys that do that for a living, they look at Winsor & Newton like, I don't know, like we would look at those crappy 50p paintbrushes,
gotcha.
Compared to our Series 7s and things like that, But for what we do, they're absolutely fine. They're excellent.
Nice.
That was a great answer, Henry. I enjoyed that.
I was looking forward to that one. I enjoyed that one down. I like oil paint. I think it's really cool.
I'm with you on that one. I mentioned before the show of buying, all the paint racks and having all the paint. I know we were talking about just, collection of paints. The ironic part is now as I use oils more and more, I end up just having, basically 10 colors that I'm doing everything with, not the 600 acrylic paints I have around me. Oh, life's
I'm really
full of irony.
To paint one of our, I think I might paint the Deorgard model in just oils or predominantly in oils. I think it could be really cool, which is also a nice, remember Andy saying how in the large scale figures, 75 mil, 54 mil, whatever, the old boys used to paint in oils. Painting them in acrylic wasn't a thing. So it's kind of nice to.
One of my funniest memories actually was when I was at Monte San Savino. There was an older guy. He was like a really unbelievable painter, and he was like, "This is acrylics," and I'm like, "Yeah, like who doesn't paint with acrylics?" Because we're in this world where you get your Games Workshop paints, you get your Vallejo.
Sure.
But I just remember speaking to this guy, and he was like, "This can't be acrylics." Like, what do you use? Oils for everything. It was great. I loved that.
That's awesome. All right. Let's see. Deathcore says when painting 28mm, you suggest to take opposite quarters when picking light sources. What would you recommend / thought process in the case of something like these larger miniatures and the busts? So I assume basically how you're thinking about your light sources with these.
I think when it comes to light sources, it just doesn't matter. There's no rule. I think we say the quarters because it's a simple rule. And when you're painting 100 Marines, 100 Guardsmen for an army, you don't think about the individual light source situation, right? You batch paint, you airbrush them from these same angles. But when you paint a single figure, you are obviously painting just one. So your lighting situation can be bespoke to that figure. So all you need to do is think about your vision, what you want it to look like, and that will dictate how many light sources and what those light sources are, and that's also down to how confident you are. So there's nothing wrong with having one light source on a figure from the upper right. That's it, and you can make a figure look great. I mean, I'm painting the Archer right now, doing that for the live stream, and she's just got a strong light from the upper right. And that's it, and I'm really happy with how it looks. And it's just, you just have to look at a figure, and there's gonna be an obvious light source that's flattering to that figure. So just think about what's gonna make this figure look better, look best. And there's areas where it's open, and that's like, okay, this open area, that's where the light should hit because I've got all this room to paint it. And then as you get more confident, say you've done like 10 or 20 busts, then you might be like, okay, I'm going to have a strong light coming from here, and then another light with a different color from another angle, and that's all just part of your journey and growing. So I'd say try not to think of any rules. Think about what's going to look cool, and maybe just ask some advice from someone who who's maybe more experienced. But it really doesn't matter. You can do any light source you want with figures. So I'll leave it there because we could talk for an hour on that.
We could. It's such a huge topic. And I'll say that these bigger scales allow you to explore light sources in a much more robust way. And if you're really not sure about where to light it from, just go to, go do a Google image search for people, for like human beings, real people in the lighting conditions you have in your mind. Because there's all sorts of just artist reference images on Google, or just people who take photos out in the world. And so if you want like a strong, directional lighting kind of from below, there's going to be lots of people lit by campfires and lit by other lights and art references and stuff. They're just real human beings standing with light, and there's photos of them. And you're never going to get a better, you're never going to have a better reference than just like how it works in real life. That's always going to be the easiest way to look at it. So.
Let's do a YouTube video on it, Henry. I'll do that.
Sounds good.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks.
All right. Dave says, do your sculptors do manually with a wireframe, or do they work digitally with like ZBrush or something like that?
It's all computer aided design. We made the decision when we started. Yeah. Sorry, you can take it if you want, bud.
I was going to say the same as you, probably. But basically, I mentioned earlier that myself and Henry always had a vision of trying to be contemporary, and that's with the aesthetics of the brand. But I love some traditional sculptors. Some of my favorites are traditional. Alan Carrasco, Valentin Zach, and they're traditional. But we made a decision as a brand to go what's modern. And at the time, this is a few years ago, we just said let's go all 3D. So they're all 3D sculpted, and that's allowed us to do things like produce Deorgard in 75mm as a stretch goal, because he's in CAD. So that's one of the amazing things about doing it in CAD. So I think we'll always and only do stuff with CAD, but traditional's still amazing.
Sure.
Yeah. From an art direction point of view, like we were very heavily involved throughout the process, and had it been with traditional sculptors, I honestly don't think we'd have ended up with a product at the end of it. I think it just wouldn't have worked. The fact that the artists were able to respond so quickly to our demands and our thoughts, it just meant the process was. It means we've ended up with models where we don't want to change anything.
We needed it.
It's wicked, right? It's quite relaxing to sort of.
Right.
Oh, there you go. There's not that niggling sort of thought of, I wish we could have done that.
Right.
Everything's as we wanted it, which is great.
Nice. All right, let's see. Gomezara, how do you balance your time doing the process of the entire production of the Kickstarter, commissions, the channel, and of course painting your own minis? Yeah, let's talk about time balance right now. I'm sure this has been a fun couple of weeks for you.
And work.
Yes,
yeah,
and work, yes.
We touched on it earlier, didn't we? Like I said, so Colour Paint's my full-time job. Andy has another job. So when it comes to balancing our time, that's why I said earlier, it works well where Andy can use his personal projects to also be a Patreon or YouTube or whatever like that. But yeah, it's tough, man. Like I think we all, all of us that work find that time is pretty precious when it comes to hobby. It's one of the things we often talk about with airbrushing when people ask why do it, and you sort of go, well, a lot of hobbyists I think tend to be more time poor than money poor, if we're being honest. We could probably not buy another plastic kit and be all right, but it is challenging, and when your job is within this hobby, when you want to switch off from it, it can be quite difficult when that switch off time in the past may have been painting.
Right. Right.
painting miniatures. But I know getting a new puppy is a terrible idea as well. But I've found that not gaming has definitely, due to lockdowns and all the rest of it, I found that's definitely had an impact on my productivity from a personal level. You know, I've not got tournaments to go to or anything, but there isn't. It's quite hard to find personal deadlines for me at the moment, whereas it's a lot easier for me to find work deadlines. You know, all right, okay, so I need to do that video for the YouTube, I need to do that video for the and you sort of, for me anyway, the personal stuff sort of goes out the window. And it's something me and Andy chatted about this week. You know, I want to address it, and get that personal passion, you know, or project just ticking over as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. We'll do a couple more quick questions, and then we'll call it a day, so we don't take all of your day up, because as just mentioned, time is a premium when doing all this. So here we go. Are there any techniques you feel beginners should really try and concentrate on after the basics? Like once you have the basics down, are there certain techniques you feel are highly valuable?
I think we should both answer this one. See what we think. I'm really passionate about doing the basics amazingly well. So I'll take up one example: putting the paint on the model well. So one of my most commonly asked questions is how do you paint smooth or whatever, and there isn't a technique. Like I don't do wet blending, although I know a lot of people get amazing results from it. But when I find I get the best results, it's just how well am I able to apply the paint. And what I mean by that is dilution, loading the paint on the brush, how soft you're able to compress those bristles. And I think that is what makes a model look amazing, is when the paint's been applied very, very well. And then, you know, when you look at people like the heavy metal team stuff in the hand, it's pretty crazy. And I think if you haven't held an heavy metal painter's model in your hand like this, I'm not talking behind a cabinet, I mean literally like that, you really understand a difference technical side of painting is, and that's just the application of paint. So I think there isn't a technique, like if you said non-metallic metal, wet blending, like a specific thing. I love doing on the Patreon really simple recipes, but like how well can we apply this?
Right.
Like if we just use a Citadel dark red, a medium red, and a light red, we can get ridiculous results, like perfect results, if we can apply the paint well. And I think people might skip to trying stuff. I mean, I have it with my one-to-one lessons a lot. People are trying things, and I'm like, just layer the paint well. Try not to glaze or wet blend. Layer it perfectly, and you'll be surprised what you can get. So I'll cap myself off there and let Henry.
No, I love it. Just real quick, it makes me think of so if you're a sushi chef in Japan, like in the formal training of it, for the first several years of your training, you're only allowed to touch the rice. And you only working with the rice. Like you don't touch the fish or anything else. You're just perfecting working with the rice and getting a perfect sort of roll and everything like that, because perfection is the goal there, right? With the very basic thing. Then once you've got that mastered, then we'll let you touch the fish, right? It feels very similar. Okay, Henry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I like that.
So I think generally I'd agree with Andy on that. But to throw out two more options, I guess, because I do really agree on that. I think technique's an overused sort of word. I think everything's pigeonholed a bit too much. But I think largely painters often fall into one or two categories. And this is true for me and Andy. Is Andy had painting heroes and he knew what he wanted to paint like. That gave him a very direct route of, okay, that's where I want to get to. How do I get there? I don't really have a preferred style. I love the processes generally. I love learning new techniques and learning new processes. So I would say if you're someone who knows exactly where you want to do, you go, oh, I want to paint like Andy Wardle. Well, I mean, obviously just come on a cult paint class or go on the YouTube and the Patreon and whatnot. But
Buy the Deorgard box
yeah,
set.
buy the Deorgard box set.
Sure, easy.
And enjoy those tutorials. But that's a bit flippant. But it is a case of if you can reach out to that person, or just look around, look at similar painters, and then you will be able to analyze from there what techniques you should be concentrating on. On the flip side, just learn as much as you possibly can and don't pigeonhole techniques. Watch someone who's a military modeler working on some 1/35th scale tank or whatever. You might not give a hoot about that style of hobby, but I guarantee you'll learn something. If they're a good teacher or whatever, that you'll learn something interesting which you might be able to apply in other ways. And I think dry brushing and washing, I dry brush still on a lot of models. It's a perfectly valid technique. I hate this idea of things having a beginner's tag or a base tag as if it's really easy to be good at it. Like Andy said, you consider base coating to be a beginner's thing, right? But there's a world of difference between a well base coated model and a not terribly well base.
We love that on our class, don't we, Henry?
Yeah.
When they struggle with the base coat, because we say, right, hit challenge. We go, Vince. We say, right, we're going to base coat this model. Can you do it perfectly? And it's funny when people go, oh yeah, it's quite hard.
And you just listen to that resentment in the room of them going, I paid how much to sit here and base coat plastic model? Like, what the hell am I learning? What's going on?
Let's see if you can base coat, all right? Let's see how your base coat looks.
It is a very important skill. All right. Last question. I think we kind of talked about this a little earlier, but it's maybe worth repeating, which is when sculpting a model for painting, what do you adjust for more? Do you adjust for more composition or actual brush to model, if that makes sense? Yeah, so I think this speaks, we talked a little bit about this earlier, making the model for the painters. Who are you favoring there, right?
Yeah, and we've dismissed models that have been really, really cool 2D artwork, great poses, but you just gone, how on earth are you going to get your brush in there?
Right.
Don't work. Or the other practicalities of how they're going to sculpt that. How is that model going to hold itself up? What like you said earlier, Vince, where are those join lines going to be? All that sort of
or it's going to snap.
Yeah.
Gonna snap. Yeah, it's I guess 50-50-ish. They're sort of one and the same, to be honest. The composition, if the composition's good, then it'll be easy to get to it with the brush, and vice versa.
Makes sense. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you for all the people who backed. Keep that up. I'm so glad to see so many people backed during the show. If you haven't yet, the link is down below. Click that link. The figs are all amazing. You've been watching them scroll by. There's so many awesome options in here. I am personally really excited to see what you guys do next. I'm excited to see if you can make a dwarf at some point in time in the future that I would actually want to paint. It would be
accepted.
Yeah, that would be the first dwarf I've painted in my, second
dwarf
I would have painted in my life.
Have 2 dwarves in the next.
And me, Vince. So if Henry can make us like it, then it'll be good, right?
Absolutely. That's the mark. You've hit it, Henry. If Andy and I both want to paint,
you're both going in the book.
If you flip open the Book of Grudges, I've got pages dedicated to me, Henry. It's fine. I'm good. I've been doing nothing but lumping hate on the dwarves for years, so I'm sure I'm well recorded in the book, indexed and cross-referenced. So, but gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been great talking to both of you today.
Thanks for having us on, bud.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Vince, and we're really excited to see you paint the bust.
I can't wait.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be, it is the project at the top of my queue, and I cannot wait to just sit down and spend a lot of time carefully base coating.
I'll tell you a funny story about that before we go.
Sure.
Because I had very, very few models left when I said, Vince, would you like a model? And so I tentatively asked, which is your favorite? And I wanted to know which was your favorite, not out of the very few I had.
Right,
When
right. You just said like, yeah, whatever. Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, exactly. But when you said it's the bust, I was like, oh, thank goodness I have that one. I only have 3, but that's one I do have. So I was really happy about that you got the one you like the most. So,
Absolutely. It was the one I was most hoping that because I figured that could be the case. You don't always have, when you're talking about early pre-ship, it's not always like you've got a ton of them. And I was like, well, and that's why I gave you 2. I was like, the one I listed first was the one I really wanted. And you were like, yeah, I've got that. I was like, yes, score.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yes, cool. So that was great. But yeah, thanks. It's always really fun to talk to you, and looking forward to those classes and conventions and do this in real life.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to get back over there, over to England and see you guys, or have you guys come over here. I think we're all ready for this to be over. So with that, we can't wait to see you in person. Very much miss everybody. For all of you out there watching, thank you so much. Give a like. Don't forget the Kickstarters down below. Call to Paint YouTube channel will also be linked down below. Go sub there as well. Their Patreon information will be down there if you're interested in that. Also, basically, everything you need, it's down in the description. Go check it out. Do the appropriate stuff. But thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.